I just want to make sure that you all have the walk-in piece. Do you all have the walk-in? Okay. Okay, are there any public speakers? Okay. I'd like an approval, a motion and a second for the last meeting minutes. Okay, so moved. There are no changes to the work plan. However, we're always open for questions. Now, typically we do the project status reports. So in typical fashion, here we go.
I don't think this works.
Okay, you can use mine.
Thank you.
This whole side is here.
What was that?
The whole side's here.
Okay, let me start.
Okay, Adrian. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Let me start reviewing the project. I'll start with South Ferry. I just wanted to note that we have done an overall budget review as part of a closeout project of the project, and we are forecasting that the final cost will be up to $12 million. The increase is largely due to higher than anticipated construction management costs associated with putting the new station into service. That happened in the last 4 or 5 months of the construction management costs. The increase is also due to higher than anticipated costs for the award of the Peter Minuit Plaza. We got bids are slightly higher than we expected by about $2 million. And in addition to that, as the work is progressing and is progressing well for the Peter Minuit, we found different underground conditions that are affecting both the schedule as well as some of the cost due to the utilities that we found in the wrong spot and so forth. So there are issues that the underground conditions proved to be not according to what we expected. The Fulton Street Transit Center is progressing well. Half of the secant piles were in place to the creation of the transit center bathtub, and we expect to complete the negotiation on the underpinning of the core bin, and they expect to start to bring this to the July board for approval. In effect, we expect to have bids between now and bids and awards between now and the end of August on 3 projects: is the AC mezzanine, the 4-5, as well as the Day Street.
I asked Mike, when will we have a real update on Fulton Street? And he said in September.
Yeah, I would like to give you a total update when I already have this project underway, as well as at that time we're going to present to you also a new way of tracking projects, both from the point of view of schedule and dollars, so you will be able to see, in effect, visually, and we'll provide it on a monthly basis to you as a report as to how the jobs progress. And there's not only for that, but all other projects will do it the same way. I would we're expecting a low bid in a few days, so I would rather give you, an answer after we get the low bid in, if it's possible.
Well, let's say you postpone the question until.
Right. Well, at that time, we'll give you both the low bid as well as the estimate for the job. The number 7 line extension is doing well. The first TBM began mining on June 12th. And we already advanced about 115 or 120 feet. The excavation on the 34th Street is completed, and actually what is really of note is the fact that the lower level of the Port Authority bus terminal was reopened to bus operation on schedule following the completion of the decking over the TBM receiving chamber. And this is a good example of the work, that cooperative work with the Port Authority. The schedule of this part of work was originally to be 2 to 3 years, because we are supposed to only work 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's a 7-hour shift. We're allowed to do 24/7 operations, so we finished the work in 6 months. So that's actually number 7 is doing well.
Michael,
Yes.
do you have any agreement yet with the city on cost overruns?
At this point, we do not have. We are not anticipating a cost overrun. We are monitoring it. We did shift money from reserves to certain tasks, and that was anticipated, particularly due to the redesign around the properties that are being basically negotiated with developers. But at this point, we are not in a position to tell you about any overrun. But I can tell you we're on track in terms of time.
It's interesting how the project, I know we made note of this a month ago, that we're doing with the city is on time, is ahead of time and on
Yes.
budget.
Would you like me to give you an explanation? Because I don't think that
I'd like
it
a
just.
1-minute explanation.
Well, I think that the contractor approach to the project was very interesting. They have decided to blast. They are working in an area that are not bothering too many people, so they were able to do so. Anyone that came to visit the...
That is a good point.
Yeah.
You don't have the human factor.
So we have less interference, so we were able to move ahead.
Is there a lesson learned here?
Well, if you wanted to build in virgin territory, I guess. But I think that it's also the way the contractor in this particular case organized the job. It made a difference. They have and they have extremely good crews working. So,
Who's the contractor?
Actually, the contractor is the same contractor that we have on Second Avenue for the TBMs, Chavon, Shea, Skanska, and actually the lead here is Shea on this one. So and they're doing extremely well. It's on.
Probably
It's
an
on.
accident.
Yeah, it's on. It's on.
Are you suggesting that we should never have any provisions for cost overruns for any future contracts, because this is the only one that does have no provision for cost overruns, and it's ahead of time and below budget?
Listen,
Should we do this all the time?
Let me say this: we're not done with this project yet.
Wait a minute, wait. Let's just, let's tell them,
Plenty of time.
let's tell them the truth. As long as the city finances it, we'll be on time and on budget, right? Let's tell them the truth. Okay? Careful.
Now we have to move on to a project that's not on time and not on budget.
We are moving on now to the Second Avenue subway. And this particular project, we have, in effect, given a notice to proceed, an NTP, to Cruz Talley to do the heavy civil for the streets, for the 96th Street station. So that started. We received bids for the utility relocation and open excavation on 86th Street station, and that was a low bid that was below the engineer's estimate. So this is one of the times that we are benefiting from the weaker economy in this case. And that was for $34 million, and that is going to be awarded soon. The structural walls for the TBM lunchbox are complete. We are installing the traffic decking, and the supplemental environmental assessment for the changes at the 72nd Street and 86th Street entrances was approved by the FDA. 30-day public review period started June 1st, and it will end on July 1. And we expect that to go well. We had a public hearing on Thursday, June 18th, so things seem to be moving fine on that. Let me go to the East Side Access. We have actually here successfully completed the negotiations for the soft ground tunnels in Queens. Ronnie will present to you the budget, but just so you know, we have we're able to negotiate a budget of $659 million on this particular project. The proposal for the Northern Boulevard crossing is currently being evaluated, and then we expect to bring it to you soon as well. The second drive on the TBMs restarted, and the drill and blast excavation continues beneath 38th Street and Park Avenue. So the work there is progressing. We're still looking for ways to cut the schedule and try to advance the work faster. It is very complex, as you could imagine, and we have placed the Manhattan Tunnel excavation structure contractor on notice regarding delays. We are really not happy with that, and they are looking to see what they can do to cut down the delays that they have generated. So that's about it as far as the projects. And now I would, yes.
Last month, before we left, Lee Sanders and I discussed some key issues facing Metro North. And one of the issues was the East Side Access project and its impact on Metro North and Grand Central Terminal, particularly the pedestrian flows. I was told that these issues were being studied with conclusions shortly, and the results would be included in the project design. Once this is done, as chairman of the Metro North Committee, I would like to be briefed on this. Obviously, our concern is really ensuring that Metro North and Long Island Railroad customers are served adequately, and that Metro North customers are not negatively impacted by this project.
It is correct. There is a pedestrian study that is underway. In fact, is in its final stages. There was a meeting on that June 4th. There's another meeting today, and then I'm meeting actually with everyone this Wednesday to discuss what else needs to be done, if anything, and reach the proper conclusions based on facts rather than our imagination. And I expect to come back and in effect, give you the report that you are seeking.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions?
Ronnie?
Thank you. The procurement agenda that's in your book is being amended with a recommendation to award the East Side Access tunneling contract that Michael just referred to. This is the last phase of tunneling for East Side Access in soft ground in Queens, and the recommendation is to award to a joint venture, Granite Trailer Frontier Kemper, in the amount of $659 million. In addition, in your books, there are 3 other procurement items which are modifications to existing contracts. 1 to the East Side Access engineering contract, and then 2 for East Side Access work, both of them for Dragados Judlow, although they are for 2 separate East Side Access contracts.
Any questions? Yeah, Stirring.
You mentioned an SAI memorandum that the interim CEO was circulating concurrently. I'm not sure that I saw that.
You haven't seen it yet. It and normally doesn't go through to the individual board members. Our procurement process has a memo that lays out what the facts are. They're summarized in the staff summary. That gets circulated for internal review and recommendation to the interim CEO for her authority to sign off on it.
Can you just tell me the nature of the environmental violations on the Oregon situation for this vendor?
Yes, it's potentially for discharge, water discharge.
And there is an option along with this contract. Is this a very high likelihood we'll be exercising this option?
I think so, but it doesn't need to get done now. It's work that really doesn't get done within the next year or so.
And this is a team that has experience in soft bore tunneling?
They're probably the preeminent team in the country. They have tremendous experience, and the technical folks were really impressed with the way they approached the work with a way that minimizes risk for both of us.
Thank you.
I noticed something on the bottom of this, and I think we talked about this last time. So because the federal money for this project has never been actually formally approved into the budget, we can't award the contract until CPRB acts?
That's correct. We need the plan amendment to be acted upon.
That's pretty significant at this point, right? So we now have a contract that we can't actually award until CPRB acts. And frankly, we're not even sure who CPRB is these days. What type of delays would there be if they don't act this month?
We can't give the contract out unless they act. We have to. We're the first step. They're the second step.
Right. Has this been formally sent to them? What's that? Is there something else we have to do?
The amendment had been sent, as you know, and we've had, I think we've sent it more than once. We are evaluating now, sending it again.
And typically we withdraw it, right?
Right. So we have, if we send it soon and we have the 30 days, I'm told by the project that would still work because the contract actually would be signed in about 30 days, all of the contracting issues. We also have a few New York City Transit bids, which we got extensions on, which are at risk. So our intent at the moment, we're considering resending it. We're getting it prepared to do that. And we'll offer whatever briefings people need, and hopefully we can get it approved.
Did they change anything in the legislation last? I know they talked about CPRB approvals or non-approvals. Was that nothing was changed in that?
No, not that I recollect, Jeff.
All right, thanks.
Do you need the approval?
The Senate has a representative on CPRB. We need no dissenters, correct.
I thank the board especially for your cooperation, because I know a lot of these, in terms of the walk-in, in terms of the fact that we're approving stuff before they're really approved. It's a tricky time right now, and I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to, just give me a minute, Bill Wheeler. Once a year, Bill gives sort of a state of the state.
For periodically, we're going to fire up the presentation here. This is, I'm going to try and do this a little bit remotely. Periodically I report on planning issues and findings and so forth, and I talked to you about the Metro North survey 6 months ago, and I'm going to talk to you about this survey now, which is a survey of city residents, how they travel, all modes, all trip purposes, all days of the week. And it's something that we use for planning purposes, to help inform service, to understand the market better, to understand motorists. I have a very interesting finding in here about motorists. And it's one that we contribute to the collection of data that we and the city use to plan transportation. The city issued a report on motorists, if you remember, about 6 months ago. And the interesting finding there was that motor vehicle trips have been relatively flat in the last couple of years, while transit ridership has been growing. So, Chris, if you go, so why do we survey? We survey for several reasons: to inform service, and I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to talk to you about how we surveyed, give you some examples of what we found. It's an enormous database. It's done every 7 or 8 years because of the extent of the effort. And that's why I'm summarizing it for you. I'll have copies of the presentation for you. And excuse me. So why do we survey? We survey to inform our capital planning and our service planning. We survey to inform corridor studies. I'll talk to you about the Queens Boulevard corridor in a few minutes. to understand travel behavior, to understand motorists, origins, and destinations. These are all best practice. This is what keeps us eligible for federal funds. It makes us, it enables us to plan based on what's actually happening in the travel market, and it really is best practice. It also informs our travel forecasting models, excuse me, which we use to forecast travel and keep everyone eligible for federal aid, which is very important. It's a telephone-based survey. We also do census-type surveys and counts, which I'll talk about later. Over 16,000 households interviewed, and the interesting thing here is that now more and more households have only cell phones. That's important for a variety of reasons. It's got broad, I think, social implications and planning implications, and for us, it was a way to get at the cell phone penetration. Very important. We think that over 17% of the households in Manhattan alone are only cell phone. I think this is important when we're talking about how we communicate with our customers. It's a growing phenomenon. It affects travel research in all different types of markets, public and private, and we were able to successfully interview quite a few people, quite a few households were cell phone only. Also, we were able to confirm a lot of the transit travel using MetroCard serial numbers. That is to say, the interviewees report their serial numbers. We're able to punch those numbers up and track them electronically with trip finder information, and that helps us verify those actual trips. This is a fully federally funded project. The feds fund all of our survey work. This costs $2 million. I'll talk to you more about that in a minute.
How were you able to track trips via MetroCard numbers if only the point of entry is recorded?
Well, we two things. Number one, they report to us their origins and destinations, so we know where they're leaving once they get off the system. But in a separate research effort, not linked to this, we also have been developing algorithms with New York City Transit to create what's called a mirror trip. So that is to say, based on how people actually report their trips and how they use their MetroCards, we can impute the return trip. We didn't have to do that in this case because they actually reported their destinations. Okay, this was a joint effort, particularly with New York City Transit and MTA Bus, and I want to thank the planning staffs for their cooperation. We also have information in the database about people who use commuter railroad, who live in the city and commute out, and it's an enormous database which all of the agencies are going to share. Okay, now some pictures of some early results. All days of the week, all trip purposes, all modes. This means traveling for any purpose. The trips that are generated in each borough remain in each borough primarily. I'll show you a picture of work travel where that's not quite the case. Why is this important? Because just like in the suburban counties, the travel is intra-county. One of the first ways we found this out was when we were growing in ridership significantly on the bus system in the early 90s, in about 1998, 1999. And the first place we began to grow significantly were trips that began and ended in the outer boroughs. Why is this? Because the outer boroughs are more and more a place to work, and they're generating more and more of their own activity. And this is important to us so that when we're running service and we're planning service, the trip within the borough is just as important as the trip outside the borough. This is quite extraordinary, but we found this time and time again. So this is important. I can't underemphasize this too much, overemphasize. Destinations by borough. Certainly, when it comes to work trips during the weekdays, Manhattan, which is in the dark blue, is a primary destination for people who live in those boroughs and work elsewhere. But still, look at the proportion of trips that remain in those boroughs for people who work in those boroughs. So when you're on a subway car in the outer boroughs, and you look around the car, what you're seeing is a market of people, many of whom do not go into Manhattan, who get off to work or to get off to do another type of trip in the outer borough. And again, this is important to understand as we're planning service. In terms of destinations, what's interesting is if you look at Manhattan for a minute and it as a destination, for all trips, all purposes, depending on where you're coming in the outer borough, it's not a majority destination. When it's work trips, you can see that it grows more popular as a destination. When it's transit trips to work, it grows even more popular. And then finally, between 6 and 10 a.m., transit trips to work, between that time period, over 60% end up in the borough of Manhattan. This is important to understand because every market is different, showing you different times of the day and different trip purposes, which I will in a minute. They're for very different reasons. So we are by no means a homogeneous customer base when we use the transit system. That's important to understand. That's one of the reasons that MetroCard is so successful, that the discounts are so successful, because people are traveling for lots of different reasons, different purposes, different times of the day at very different trip rates. And the more and more we can meet each one of those markets, the more our ridership will grow. For weekdays, all modes, and by time of day, nearly 2/3 of all the trips are not for work purposes. Let me talk about that again. Nearly 2/3 of the trips that are made in a weekday are not to work. Is this new? No, it's not new. About 25 years ago, it was first discovered in a series of travel surveys done nationally. We identified this in the early 1990s when we did our first regional survey. More and more people are traveling for more and more different reasons, and the work trip, unlike in the 1950s and the 1960s, which was the primary reason people were mobile, people are more mobile today for many, many more reasons. And a lot of this, again, has to do with their ability to travel using this MetroCard. We saw significant changes in non-work travel and multiple trips when we were able to provide for those discounts and other features that MetroCard provides today. So it's very important to understand. In terms of trips to outside New York City, it's not of the trips originating in the city, going to everywhere for work. Most of them stay within the city, within the boroughs, or going to Manhattan. About 6% leave. But the 6% is not the full story. That 6% has grown more than 80% since 2000. And the reason that has happened is because of the number of jobs that have been generated outside the city, which capture city workers. Nassau County, Westchester County, Southern Connecticut. So on a typical day at a train station for workers headed out of the city, like Atlantic Terminal, Fordham, they're packed. And they're going, and still to this day, even with changes in the economy and so forth, you're still getting heavy flows out of the city. And that's a good thing because you're using your equipment in both directions. You're able to serve a regional economy in many different ways, not just city-bound, and it enables the employers around the region to capture the best labor force that they can. This is one of the interesting ones. Travel subsidy. In around 1994-95, we began to do focus group research first, and then we began to do more significant research like this to understand motorists. Motorists, to a large degree, are subsidized to drive. What do I mean by that? I mean they get free parking, they get the Employee of the Month Club where their tolls are paid for, and this is important to understand because when we're competing with motorists, we're competing with individuals that are in some way encouraged or it's just made easier to drive. And this is not a new finding. This is a finding we've seen many times. City DOT in their research also sees it. And I think it's important to understand that motorists are in their cars for very specific reasons, but some of those have to do with the fact that it's just easy to drive. That is to say, you can get to your destination and park for free, for example. This is citywide.
Sorry, Bill.
Yeah.
I found this very interesting, this bit of it. How can we promote this?
Well, in the second line, what I show is this is the program where the federal government sponsors up to a couple of $100s a month that can be used by an employer, pre-tax dollars, to pay for transportation for their employee, public transportation primarily. This is something that more and more we have promoted, and we're going to have to continue to do this because at the very least, our customers should have the same access to available assistance to use transit as motorists have for available assistance to drive. Right. Right, right. About when I talked to Larry Filler the other day, who runs Transit Center, he was saying about 35% of the companies in New York City participate in this program. Now, the Transit Center is only one of several third parties that provide for this. But now, why is this? Well, there's paperwork involved, of course. There's accounting to be done. And the most success in recent years has been with the small companies as opposed to the large companies. But it is a benefit. We should do everything we can to make it known so that our customers have the same access that motorists have.
What have you done?
Linda, you want to? Yeah.
Some time ago, we had done a brochure. We sent letters out with the support of the partnership and the Association for Better New York and the Westchester County and Long Island Association to businesses, encouraging them to join a pre-tax benefit program. We've had cards where Helena has asked that we reinvigorate a program, and also based on the Albany legislation that was part of the new subsidies. It's part of that also that we enhance and put out a program. So we're going to be doing that. There are two parts. One is encouraging employers to join, and then the other is encouraging employees who work for employers who have joined to in turn use the benefit program. So we're going to try and do a two-pronged effort that will address both of those.
Okay, Chris. I'm going to show you just a couple more slides. These are some of the geographically based information, and this has to do with when you're looking at work trips by auto or work trips by transit. Where are they concentrating? And it's pretty plain and simple. You can see that majority of our customers, even though many work in the outer boroughs and take transit to the outer boroughs, also access employment in Manhattan. Look how disparate, look how spread out the destinations of motorists are who travel to work. A lot of these are well known to us, and in some of the previous planning efforts attached to other programs like the Ravitch proposal and so forth, where we looked at areas that we know are like the Whitestone area and Bay Ridge and southern Bronx and the Soundview area, where even though we have good bus transportation, there are still areas that are better accessed by auto. And so the best thing we can do is aggressively continue to pursue these areas and make inroads into those areas with transit. That's a goal of any of the service planning we do. You notice that Staten Island has a number of those, and as you can see, it makes sense in terms of being disparate. Now, what's interesting is look at Lower Manhattan and look at Midtown. There are areas where people park in large numbers in the borough of Manhattan to this day, and I think that is something that the city's worked aggressively on. I give a lot of credit to Jeanette Sada-Khan, who's come up with some ingenious ways to address the number of free parking spaces that are available, and we have to continue to do so. By using a combination of those efforts and serving them better by transit, we can make even more inroads into the market. We still have about an 88% share of the market into Manhattan during the typical peak period on a typical weekday. So that's an enormous market share. But even having that market share, there are more and more. There are certainly trips that move all over the city by automobile. That's good. I have two more. In terms of understanding how our customers use the service, and in looking at the subway network, I'm just going to feature the Queens Boulevard corridor for a minute. This is one of the most crowded in the network. It's coming up fast on the kinds of conditions that we experience on the Lexington Avenue line. We're going to have to pay a lot of attention in terms of capacity and what we can do. The origins are in green and the destinations are in blue. Now, this is all day. This is 24 hours. So a lot of these origins here become destinations here and vice versa. That is to say, these are origins for the return trip. What I wanted to show you is that using this information, you can see the wide geographic influence of the Queens Boulevard line. When we are asking the question, well, what can we do to address capacity on the Queens Boulevard line, understanding where people come from who use that service gives us clues as to whether or not there are additional services that we could provide on other lines or BRT strategies or other things to serve those trips. But first you have to have the intelligence to do so. So we're going to be making this data available and cooperatively studying this corridor, hopefully, with New York City Transit in the future. So this is one of those. Another significant corridor is the West Side IRT, experiencing also heavy growth in the last 10 years, a lot of development up in this area of Manhattan, drawing a lot of trips, making conditions even more and more busy. And you can see the influence of the IRT services and how far afield many of the origins come from to use these services and take advantage of these corridors. Again, understanding this will help us understand how we can relieve this corridor, how we can provide for better service, because demand continues to grow. So the next steps are informing the kinds of corridor studies which I just talked about a minute ago. There's over 40,000 trips logged in, over 13,000 households, a significant database, one that comes along about once a decade. And we'll be providing, we're able to maintain our federal eligibility for all of these mega projects. The funding that comes in for them depends on how we forecast. They actually do report cards of our forecasts. They evaluate how we do it when we apply for new funds, and we get very high marks because of the kind of research that we do here. So there'll be a lot of data sharing with the agencies. One of the things we've tried to do in the last 10 years is make a very large database of all that's generated available to everyone from the transit agencies, commuter railroad, bridges and tunnels, and so forth. So this is just a peek. Thank you for listening. I'll have copies for the board members, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you.
Bill is one of our least known gems at the MTA, and I invite all the board members on their own to sit down and meet with Bill and talk to him. He's full of really interesting information that will help you understand better what you'd like to understand. And more important, everybody needs to understand that what he does is very important for the capital planning for our 5-year capital program. His information is fed into, when he talks about increasing service and doing better, we need extra buses, we need extra train cars. It all costs money to do all this work, so it's very important to our capital planning.
Yeah, Bill's presentations are one of the highlights, for me at least, of these meetings. I think it would approximately every 6 months you give us, yeah, even though I know I handcuff you in terms of how much time I give you, I do thoroughly enjoy it. Thank you. Okay. Oh, sure.
Can I ask the gem a question?
Absolutely. Do you have your little loop to look at?
Bill, the old planning technology used to be that when you were planning, you'd have a blue ribbon panel of 3 professors of transportation. One of them was always Professor Mitchell Moss, and the other 2 came from some barely recognizable institution someplace.
Right.
And they would issue a report which would say, if you put a station someplace and you add service someplace, people will go there. And the more service you put on there, the more people go there. And if you don't put a station someplace or service there, people don't go there. Other than impressing the pants off the Federal Department of Transportation, isn't that the story?
Well, actually, it's a little more complicated. It's a lot more complicated. But I do keep in touch with Mitchell Moss. At some point, we should talk about that, because we do have a panel of economists that we talk to also.
Linda is still.
Right. I still look like Rocco. There are 13 action items, and after that, Nancy will do a brief presentation on the status in 08 of Grand Central Terminal development. For the action items, 4 of them are New York City Transit action items. One is notable. Like last month, we're able to bring another negotiated acquisition for property for the East Side Access Vent Plant building. This negotiated acquisition will avoid the costs, substantial costs associated with the condemnation process. Of the 13 action items, 9 are Metro North, and 2 of those are notable. One is approval of determination and findings of the hearing for the termination of leasehold interests at 525 North Broadway in White Plains. And this will allow Metro North to build the offices and the safety auxiliary services that they need to, and to allow them, if necessary, to terminate the tenancies by eminent domain. They will, of course, try to do that through negotiated settlement, but it gives them the opportunity to do it by eminent domain. Similarly, another notable item for Metro North, which I believe was discussed at the Metro North Committee, is the approval of the term sheet and pre-development agreement between Metro North and the Village of Harrison, which will govern a proposed transit-oriented development and parking structure next to the station. The intent is to find a developer who would develop the TOD. The village would contribute, would pay the cost of the parking structure. Metro North would make the land available and in turn get 500 spaces in the parking structure. The materials indicate that up to $275,000 will be spent by Metro North on these pre-development and RFP activities, 50-50 split with the village of the pre-development activities, up to 100, and then 175,000 for RFP development. Given the softness of the market, it's a wonderful opportunity to do all this planning work with the notion of being prepared to move forward when hopefully the market is better, and this is a wonderful, wonderful site for a transit-oriented development. Those are the highlights of the 13 action items.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, I knew you'd like that one, Jim. I knew it. A second? Okay, all in favor? Aye, so moved. Nancy, you're up at bat.
Great. I'm going to give you the highlights of the report that's in your package from how we did for the remainder of 08, for the year 08. We finished out 08 fully leased, which is great news, especially in light of the economy. As we move forward, we looked at the total sales as it increased from 08 to 07, and we had a 4% increase in total sales for all stores reporting. When we looked at how tenants did the year prior, until the fourth quarter, we had 61 of our stores reporting positive sales to the year prior. The fourth quarter took a toll a little bit, but in spite of that, we did have an increase in percentage rent of $440,000 over the previous year. I think in looking just overall at why the retail didn't have too much of a dive in 08 is because of our predominance of food and essentials like that. The areas of the terminal that did experience some decrease are the areas for clothing or hard goods, and not so much the immediate purchase of food or restaurants or fast food or market foods. I'm just going to give you some highlights, so if you have any questions from what you were able to read, just throw them out there. I was asked last year to give some comps as to how we stacked up in terms of potentially another project or other stores in that some of our national chains, how those stores at Grand Central do. You'll see on page 4 a bit of a comparison to Union Station, which is one of the best examples we can compare Grand Central's retail to. And you'll see the numbers are quite favorable in all categories. And then if you look at page 5, you'll just get a nice indicator of how some of our national stores do in comparison to those chains, throughout those chains' portfolios. Moving ahead to, I'm just going to jump ahead and let you focus on some new leasing efforts, because that's where a predominance of our effort has gone over the last year. Due to the fact that we leased so much space in 1998, so many of those leases, 10-year leases, expired or are expiring now. And a huge focus of our effort is on releasing. And we use this opportunity to tweak some of the uses that we feel have maybe gone by the wayside, and trying to bring in new and exciting retail. What we've noticed is so many of our tenants, for example, in the Lexington Passage, which I urge you to go take a walk today, you'll see some of the fruits of our efforts. These stores, for the most part, are stores that had small stores and wanted to grow. So you'll see a lot of that has occurred. In every case, in that regard, those tenants have completely renovated. Even if they stayed in their initial store, they've done full renovations because we have to freshen it for the next 10 years. The listing on page 9, I think, is interesting in that you can see where we've also brought in some brand new tenants. We've tried very hard to balance the national with the mom and pop because that's what makes us special. And if we don't do that, we'll see a horrible loss, I think, in the overall merchandising of the project. So you'll see a bit of a nice mixture of some new tenants coming in. And then a look ahead for '09, some stores that have recently signed leases, Magnolia Bakery in the dining concourse, Orange Daily Roast stays in the market for their beans. And you'll notice that we've had significant increase in minimum rents over the leases that were done 10 years ago. And that's all very positive news for us. Some of the capital projects that have gone on in the terminal in '08 and this year, many of these projects use retail revenues to invest back into the building, which is we have to do, or else you'll see a decline in the overall atmosphere, and that's what we have to avoid. If you have any questions on the financials on page 12 or 13, I'll be happy to answer anything you have.
Do we have any, is there still any open space in Grand Central Terminal?
There is one space right now in the Biltmore room, which we are going to put out for RFP in the next month for a bar cafe. We're going to play off the fact that the Yankee Stadium trains are going from that area, and we're going to invigorate what I think has been an area that didn't see as much traffic as it could. So there is nothing vacant other than that. And as we release, we do it well in advance so that when the expiring term is up, we are ready to bring the new tenant in.
Nancy, I mean, the performance for '08, given the year it was, is really remarkable. How are we trending for the first quarter or so of 2009?
We're trending a lot of negatives, however, less negative with the food, which is great. There's double-digit negative on some of the hard good retail. I don't think we're trending any worse than other places. In fact, I think we probably are trending better than as bad as it could be. So it's not great, but in light of how horrible it is everywhere else, we don't have stores wanting to leave, which is great. And we continue to, in all of our new leases, meet or exceed the asking rents. So I think we're okay.
I thank you, and my perpetual diet thanks you for Magnolia Bakery going in there.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
What are some of the key, what are the $9 million worth of expenses?
They are the janitorial service to clean the terminal. They are the general administrative for the retail management for Jones Lang LaSalle. They are the leasing efforts for Williams Jackson Ewing. They are the marketing. They go through Metro North. You approve them through Metro North financing. Right. That's where they go through. Because that's how all the revenue comes out, nets out to Metro North.
Do you have enough time, Nancy, to also supervise our Lockheed and Siemens contract?
You don't want me to do that.
Mark, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
He's been very...
Can I add something? Yeah, I think it's important to note that the funding is very important to Metro North because that's part of how we keep Grand Central Terminal in the beautiful condition it's in. And as you all know, when you're responsible for a historic building, those costs can be very, very steep. So we're very pleased to see this and always have been.
And I can tell you from my experience in the real estate business, we're doing terrific. I mean, we are really doing remarkable. We have all these people in the real estate department who I see in the elevator frequently, and I wonder what they're doing. We all now know what you're doing, and we thank you very much.
Thank you again, Bill, for your presentation, and thank you for your kind of, sort of bad, good news. Yeah. well,
I don't know. I think they're primarily good.
Hopefully they'll balance each other out. And I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second. All in favor? Aye. We'll see you next month. Thank you.